Before July 1947, there had only been whispers of mysterious aircrafts in the sky, objects that didn't match things like conventional planes and helicopters, objects that were able to travel at extreme speeds without making a sound. These reports were around, but they never really caught people's attention. The Roswell incident is often credited as being the beginning of a movement, one that would only grow in size as the years went on, and would be the catalyst for the emergence surrounding the study of mysterious flying aircrafts. For years, many people have investigated Roswell. Stories have changed and new discoveries have come to light, helping us to better understand what actually happened that day. Thanks to the Freedom of Information Act, a very interesting document has now come to light detailing what happened that day. It can be found in the FBI's vault, and thanks to the Freedom of Information Act, thousands of these documents have been released onto the site in recent years, with many of them going into detail about strange encounters that they've had to deal with. This document is an internal memo to J. Edgar Hoover, the director of the FBI, and it comes from the head of the Washington, D.C. field office. An Air Force investigator reported that something interesting did happen. The document reads as follows. An investigator for the Air Force stated that 3 so-called flying sources had been recovered in New Mexico. They were described as being circular in shape, with ray centers approximately 50 feet in diameter. Each one was occupied by 3 bodies of human shape, but only 3 feet tall, dressed in a metallic cloth of very fine texture. Each body was bandaged in a manner similar to the blackout suits used by speedflies and fast pilots. According to Mr. Addicted, the sources were found in New Mexico due to the fact that the government had a very high-powered radar set up in that area. And it's believed that the radar interfered with the controlling mechanisms of the sources. End quote. Not only has this document been praised by believers, with many of them saying that this is the proof that they've been waiting for, but they've said that it also answers one of the biggest questions surrounding this event, and this was why and how would advanced crafts crash into Earth? If they had the ability to get here, what's the likelihood that such an advanced craft would just crash once it arrived? Believers have said that this document now answers that question. A high-powered radar interfered with this craft's inner mechanisms, which in turn caused them to crash. Back in the late 2000s, Elf Fulford, who said he was at the site and helped clean up the debris, was at the time one of the last surviving people who was actually at the crash site. Elf said that the material they picked up was lightweight and able to return to its original form, going on to describe it as being silver in color, being shiny but describing it as being very durable. When he was being interviewed by the UFO Hunters team, they laid out several materials, some of which included everyday foil and also mailer foil. However, when Earl put this up, he said that it didn't match what he picked up at the crash site, and went on to note that it was too heavy. He said that the material he picked up at the site was pretty much weightless, and that no matter how much he tried to tear it up or scrunch it up, it would always return back to its original shape, saying that he'd never felt a material like it before. The team then, without Earl's knowledge, managed to recreate a material based on what he described. And when he picked it up, he described it as being a close match. He said the following when he picked up the material. This one feels more like the material. We could squeeze it and it would pop back. The thickness and weight is similar. It makes chills run down my back. End quote. The material they had created was from an acetate. But as the team pointed out, this type of material was not used in Project Mogul balloons. Only acetate tape was used, which bears no resemblance to the type of material that was being picked up that day. Earl only spoke about this encounter at the end of his life, with his wife, Mary Fulford, saying the following. Earl felt like he was out of prison. He felt like he'd been held for years in a vacuum and was finally released. It was great. The last 2 years of his life, he was in his glory because he was able to speak up. End quote. As of right now, many believers have said that we're heading in the right direction and that each year more and more people are coming forward with their stories and encounters, including those who held high positions in the military. Even scientists have started to open up and talk about this topic, saying that we have a whole era of phenomena that hasn't been studied by science, and that this phenomenon deserves the same treatment as every other study. So what do you make this interesting announcement? Over 250,000 individuals are reported missing every year, with estimates of actual missing person cases that are left unreported pushing that total to more than 300,000 cases annually. With that many reporters, it's no wonder that a vast majority of these cases are left unsolved. However, every now and then there's a series of missing cases that emerge that are so peculiar they become the subject of impossible to explain theories. Known as the Missing 411, there appears to be a substantial number of missing person cases related to the disappearances of individuals from national parks. On the 21st of November, back in 1953, a 40-odd man by the name of Charles Warner would suddenly vanish under suspicious circumstances. While elk hunting with a close friend after claiming that he was going to make a quick stroll back to his car to gather additional supplies for their hunting trip. Although the disappearance of Charles Warner is not exactly as dramatic or strange as some would believe, the physical evidence left behind would point to something far more strange having occurred in the area. According to the report, Charles Warner, an experienced hiker and outdoorsman of many years, decided to travel to the Umatilla National Forest, located a little less than 20 miles south of the Washington border. Rather than go alone, Warner was well aware of the safety protocols and so decided to bring along a close friend of his, another highly experienced hunter and outdoorsman to go elk hunting with. As the two men arrived at the location towards the end of November, they decided to travel an additional 5 miles south, as Warner drove his car off a road that entered deeper into the wilderness. The first 2 days in the region, Charles and his hunting partner grew increasingly frustrated, as they remarked to each other that there appeared to have been no wildlife in the area, not even small game animals that should have littered the trees and forest floors. It was on the 21st of November during Saturday morning. Charles Warner and his hunting partner decided to end the trip to begin prepping for Thanksgiving, given the fact that not a single elk had been spotted by even men the entire time they'd visited the region. Towards the middle of the afternoon, however, Charles and his hunting partner believed that they'd heard large game animals moving into the region, as they were roughly 1 mile away from Charles's podcast. After spending a few minutes looking for the animals and tracking their possible location, Charles told his hunting partner that he was going to return to his car momentarily to bring along some additional supplies as they were planning on following the elk for quite some distance. Deciding to stay behind in the air in the hopes of funneling the elk more towards Charles's location, Warner's hunting partner stayed in the same location to wait for Charles's return. After several hours of waiting, however, Charles's hunting partner started to grow suspicious that Warner had abandoned him, possibly as a joke or because he had happened to find a better hunting ground. This would cause Charles's hunting partner to return to Warner's car that was located at the side of the road, within a mile of their location. Once back at Warner's car, however, it became apparent that Charles had not yet returned to the area as he'd originally planned, as nothing in the car had been moved and Charles was nowhere to be found. Wired that Charles was lost as the sun was now setting, the hunting partner quickly contacted National Forest officials to begin a search and rescue operation within the hour. The search and rescue team was composed of the local county sheriffs, around a dozen local residents who served as volunteers, rangers and officials from the United States Service personnel, and private airplane pilots from the nearby airport to serve as aerial support. Despite more than several dozen individuals assisting with the search, no sign of Charles Warner was recovered. Within the first 2 days of the search, a sudden snowstorm would pass through the region, making search efforts far more difficult. On the third day of the search, Charles's 2 sons would join the search and rescue efforts and would assist in trying to locate their father in the region, but would still be unable to find any sign of Charles within his 6-mile radius. It would be around this time that a bizarre series of physical evidence was uncovered that led investigators into believing that something far more peculiar had occurred in the area. Although it was impossible to verify, search and rescue volunteers believed that they'd found tracks that belonged to Charles Warner, coming back through a muddy region slightly covered by fresh snow. The tracks had made a straight path to the car and had prints that directly matched the shoes of Charles Warner's. The tracks appear to have suddenly ended roughly 2,000 feet from the car's location, as if Charles Warner had suddenly lifted off the ground or had removed his shoes and covered his tracks in a deliberate manner. Despite looking in a more than 10-mile radius surrounding where Warner had last been seen, no other signs of Charles was uncovered by search and rescue volunteers, and the worsening weather conditions would make it increasingly difficult for the operation to continue any further. On the 29th of November 1953, the official organized search and rescue for Charles Warner was ended. However, on the 30th of November, a small newspaper clipping announced that he had been found underneath a tree, with researchers saying that previous members had searched close to this area, but didn't find him. The small newspaper clipping stated that he had a heart attack. So what do you make of these cases? There are plenty of opportunities for research out there in the universe, from mysterious questions we are yet to answer to incredible discoveries we didn't know were out there at all. So today we will be taking a look at 3 recent astronomical discoveries. Mysterious source of high-energy cosmic radiation. One puzzle we have been pondering for more than a century now is that of high-energy cosmic rays. What exactly are they? Where do they come from, and what makes them so difficult to research and understand? Cosmic rays are a combination of subatomic particles made from high-energy protons and atomic nuclei. They are formed from the Sun from places in the Milky Way galaxy outside of our own solar and in other galaxies altogether. These rays move incredibly fast, at a rate that approaches the speed of light. It is a frequent occurrence for cosmic rays to hit our upper atmosphere, but we still cannot determine precisely where they come from. As these rays crash into our upper atmosphere here on Earth, they cause high-energy collisions, small versions of those we see in our most powerful particle colliders, following the what has been referred to as a shower. Despite their regular impact upon us and our long knowing of their presence, we are yet to determine exactly where they come from. With all the tech we have and equipment available in the modern day, you would have thought we would have been able to trace these elusive travelers back to their origins. Unfortunately, it is not that simple. There is one factor that makes tracing cosmic rays so much more difficult. Simply put, that is magnetic fields. Julia Schuess, a professor at the School of Physics and Astronomy at Ruhr University in Bochum, Germany, explained that as the charged cosmic rays pass through a magnetic field, they are essentially redirected. She offered further explanations, saying, as magnetic fields in space have local small randomly oriented structures, a prediction of the exact path of the cosmic ray particle is impossible. She continues, likening the path of a cosmic ray to a ball in a pinball machine, seemingly random and therefore impossible to accurately trace back. Cosmic rays first caught the attention of the scientific community in the early 1900s. Up until that point, a consistent range of energies of particles were known, and then these incredibly high-energy rays, throwing all previous figures into tiny proportions, were discovered. This was a truly tremendous discovery. Even today, now that we know the universe accelerates particles to these incredibly high energies, we are no closer to understanding precisely how this is done. Schu's most recent paper looks at how the modern technology we have access to today could help us to figure out the origins of these cosmic rays, solving the riddle of the century. It is the current understanding that it takes some sort of powerful astronomical event for these cosmic rays to clock in with such high energies, meaning we can rule out some possible sources. Schuess describes this, explaining that something with a large velocity runs into something with a slower one. Some sort of shock is produced. This shock, combined with the turbulence from the cosmic rays moving through magnetic fields, results in the acceleration. The question that is left is what astronomical event is behind the shock. One contender is supernovae, with the needed shock being one more consequence of the exploding star. This is just one theory as to what exactly is going on with these cosmic rays. There is plenty of research being undertaken, from attempting but not yet succeeding to match the acceleration of cosmic rays in the Large Hadron Collider, our most powerful particle accelerator, to balloon trips that took place back in 1925. Between theories, old and new, and research equipment both cutting-edge and traditional, we have looked at a great range of techniques and ideas to try and figure out exactly how these cosmic rays work. Tatooine-like planet spotted from Earth, Kepler 16b. We often wonder what it would be like for aspects of our favorite films to come to life. We might be far away from schools full of wizards or the competition of the Hunger Games, but we might have stumbled across a real-life Tatooine. Whilst it is an incredible claim to have allegedly found a setting from such a huge sci-fi franchise, the home of Luke Skywalker might not be all too different. And Kepler 16b. Much like Tatooine, if you were to stand on the surface of Kepler 16b, there would be two sunsets taking place. Kepler 16b is an uncommon rare exoplanet. It orbits two stars at once, with these two stars also orbiting one another. This is what is known as a binary star system and is the same explanation given to the two sunsets on Tatooine in Star Wars. So far, we have only made observations using the Kepler Space Telescope based in France at the Observatoire de Haute Provence. The telescope clocking in at 193 centimeters was used, and the team of astronomers applied the radial velocity method, allowing for the planet to be detected within the already known system. The radial velocity method involved observing the change in the velocity of a star as the planet orbits around it. When this dips, it is assumed something has passed by, hopefully, and it was in this case an exoprojector. It is a significant detail that Kepler 16b was discovered using this method. It is a reminder and proof that we do not need to send expensive, extravagant spacecrafts off in order to gain valuable information and make significant advancements. It is more than possible to use these more traditional methods to stumble across something great. One might argue that even without considering the cost, time, and overall inefficiency as a more practical choice. This method is typically more sensitive to and easily impacted by the other planets in a system, signaling to us where additional bodies we might not have considered might be. It also closes us in on the mass of a planet, providing measurements of what may be considered a planet's most fundamental property. Having demonstrated the success and effectiveness of using radial velocity on Kepler 16b, the team based in the University of Birmingham plans to conduct future research, continuing to search for circumbinary planets relying on the radial velocity method. The hope is that this can help to uncover a little more about how planets are formed. There isn't lots of information on hand regarding the formation of planets within circumbinary systems. Typically, planets are thought to be formed within the dust and gas surrounding young stars, an environment known as a protoplanetary disk. Though we are not sure if this process is even possible within a circumbinary system. With there being two stars, this could interfere with the process as we know it. There is plenty of research for us to continue exploring, with new methods, new questions, and new objects of interest. We will never be finished exploring beyond our skies. Supernova could light up the Milky Way at any time. Perhaps the last time we had a close star to us explode was in the February of 1987. Its explosion was monumental, driving forth advancements in astrophysics and breaking the media worldwide. For us here on Earth, we saw a sudden bright light in the sky. Now we have reason to believe that another supernova could follow suit sometime in the not-too-distant future. Likelihood of this occurring from the neutrinos coming from the supernova. Masayuki Nakahata and Keiko Hirata spotted the evidence of this happening thanks to the Kamiokande 2 detector at the Kamioka Underground Observatory near Hida, Japan. The pair were the first to spot these fundamental particles coming from anywhere outside of our own solar system. Nakahata, who is now a physicist at the University of Tokyo, is the head of the world's largest neutrino experiment of its kind, known as Super Kamiokande. This system will allow the observatory's computers to see in almost real time when neutrinos are being detected so that an automated alert can be sent out to the conventional telescopes all around the world, making sure as many people are able to witness this event as possible. Alec Habig, an astrophysicist at the University of Minnesota, Duluth, said, "It's going to give everyone the willies. By giving astronomers worldwide the advance notice, everyone can be ready to catch this event." The early warning provided by Super Kamiokande means that plenty of telescopes can turn, in many cases automatically, towards the supernova. When the skies are lit up, we can expect it to be brighter than a full moon, visible during the daytime and overwhelm the sensors in our telescopes which are used to looking for hard-to-spot details. It is rare for us to observe a supernova up close, an event we do not often witness and gives us a tremendous opportunity. But what do you make of these recent discoveries? There are those who have devoted their lives to attempting to answer the questions that nobody can answer, and many have succeeded. From revelations about strange tools for evolution found hidden within our genetic code, to copious amounts of alcohol being scattered through space by a comet, it truly seems that there is no end to the capabilities of the most brilliant scientific minds of the day. So today, we will be diving into 3 recent discoveries and looking at the impact that they made on how we understand the world. Hidden code in our DNA found. Our DNA is what allows us to be the distinctive and individual beings that we are, and is the driving force behind both the similarities and differences of each unique human. Because changes and random mutations within DNA are the driving forces behind both evolution and genetic diseases, researchers have spent countless dollars and hours attempting to uncover the mysteries hiding within the coding of our DNA. Studying mutations is a bit of a double-edged sword that has perplexed scientists for decades because of the paradoxical nature of evolution and disease. On one hand, mutations within the genetic coding material are typically detrimental to function and disrupt the normal flow of body systems. So how can certain mutations affect the individual in such a positive way that entirely new species can be generated over time? This is the question that has plagued scientists for years. But it seems that an answer has finally been proposed. Research led by Jeanette Yulee, a professor of molecular neuroscience with University College London, has suggested an answer at long last. The research team behind this revelation discovered a code hidden within the part of our genetic material known as repetitive genetic elements, which are DNA sequences that our cells can continually make many copies of. Over time, this repetition has included itself thousands of times in our genome, which is a phenomenon that is unique to the human species and has been shown to play a vital role in evolution. The repetitive elements can switch on and off, controlling which characteristics are presented in an individual, allowing for the slow, continual evolution of the species as favorable traits are selectively chosen and propagated. The code that the research team found within these repetitive genetic elements could help to explain how these pieces of DNA are used to mitigate the potential disruptions of genetic mutations that could be favorable to the species. It works as a sort of molecular balancing act of positive and negative forces, working through proteins to control whether mutations within repetitive elements remain and are slowly integrated into the DNA or are removed. The negative force steps in and removes it and vice versa. This complicated but harmonious process allows mutations to exist quietly in our genetic code, harmlessly accumulating further mutations until the inherent code is slightly altered enough that the repetitive element takes on a meaningful function, thus furthering evolution. In contrast, a genetic disorder is a mutation that happens rapidly, disrupting body systems as the affected code can no longer optimally interact with the unaltered elements of the genetic material. This research is groundbreaking as it helps to explain why evolution is such a long process occurring over an indefinitely long period of time. Our genes are not slowly changing in order to move towards evolution one code at a time, but rather operating under a facilitation and inhibition process that allows for fluid changes to be slowly integrated, providing that the balance between the associated genetic code is also present for maximum continued function. Despite the fact that the inherent mechanisms of disease and evolution are the same, researchers now understand a bit more about why evolution operates to effectively and successfully propel a species forward, while similar mutations occurring alone in an individual will result in discord and dysfunction. Ultra-massive black holes, one of the most mind-boggling elements of space, is its sheer size. Not only does space itself stretch infinitely away from us in all directions, but the objects within the ever-expanding cosmos display proportionately massive sizes. And when it comes to large objects within the universe, generally black holes will take the prize. Black holes themselves were already almost unbelievably large. So when researchers discovered a class of black holes set apart from the rest by their even larger size, scientists could not believe it, dubbing them supermassive black holes. But it did not stop there. Now there is an even larger class of this mysterious space phenomenon called ultramassive black holes that dwarfs even the unbelievably huge supermassive black holes. But what are ultramassive black holes and why are they just so massive? This is a question that researchers have been attempting to answer since the discovery of ultramassive black holes. But it is a question that does not have a simple answer. A video by Kurzgesagt aptly declared that ultramassive black holes are perhaps the largest single bodies that will ever exist, which is an incredibly strong statement considering the sheer size of the various objects in space. They are not just slightly larger than even supermassive black holes, they absolutely billions upon billions larger than our own sun. In fact, they are so large that they could easily fit multiple solar systems within them. Ton 618, the largest ultramassive black hole so far discovered, clocks in at 66 billion times the mass of the sun, which is a number almost beyond comprehension. These black holes are usually found in the early days of our universe, when slightly different rules apply. But this presents a problem for astrophysicists. According to our timeline of the universe, there was simply not enough mass in these early stages to generate and fuel ultramassive black holes of such epic proportions. At this early stage in the universe formation, there were just the beginning spirals of galaxies with only a few stars interspersed among the swirling gas clouds, which was simply not enough matter to generate black holes dozens of times the mass of the sun. In a word, ultramassive black holes should not exist and were formed under impossible circumstances. Despite the complexity of the circumstances, researchers have continued to attempt to solve the mystery of how these gargantuan structures were formed. But it seems that every time a theory is proposed, it is quickly disproven as yet another example of the unnatural element of such large black hole formation. For now, having discovered the presence of ultramassive black holes, must suffice as researchers attempt to continue to peel back the layers behind how they could have ever formed in the first place. Researchers catch Comet Lovejoy giving away alcohol. When you think of alcohol, you might think of wild parties or breweries and rolling vineyards, but it is not likely that you immediately think of space. However, aptly named Comet Lovejoy was observed expelling large amounts of alcohol as it made its way through space in recordings taken by an international team of researchers. Although alcohol itself has many versions, Lovejoy was releasing ethyl alcohol, the very same type that gives adult beverages its kick. In fact, Nicholas Baver, the lead author of the paper announcing the astonishing discovery, said that, "We found that Comet Lovejoy was releasing as much alcohol as in at least 500 bottles of wine every second during its peak activity. And while that is certainly a mind-boggling amount of alcohol, that is not the only thing that Lovejoy left trailing through the sky in its wake. That the researchers were able to identify, including glycolaldehyde, a simple sugar. So beyond the fact that it makes for an interesting bit of trivia, why does it matter that a comet was flying through space spewing alcohol in its wake? The answer lies in the fact that researchers are constantly searching for clues as to how the universe formed into the infinitely varied mass of galaxies and planets that we know today. Such as ethyl alcohol, provide support for theories hypothesizing that comets could have been one of the key initial sources of the complex organic molecules that were necessary for life to appear on our planet and perhaps elsewhere in the universe as well. In fact, comets are essentially frozen time capsules from the early days of our universe that orbit well outside of the reach of the sun. However, occasionally gravity proves too strong for one of these comets, such as Lovejoy, and it's drawn into the warmer space closer to the sun, releasing molecules in its wake that researchers study in order to determine not only the comet's composition, but also what elements might have been present during the early days of the universe. These frozen bodies, streaking through the sky, likely act as refrigerators of sorts, preserving materials such as gas and dust from the formation of the solar system and the explosions of stars. And the fact that Lovejoy contained a surprising amount of ethyl alcohol could provide substantial evidence for the fact that comets might have been a driving force behind the generation of early life forms. But what do you make of these interesting discoveries? There are mysteries all around us, and we are fascinated by what we cannot understand. Inexplicable phenomena are discovered every day, keeping our curiosity piqued and the prospect of knowing the world around us a foreign concept. So today, we'll be looking at 3 recent discoveries exploring the deep, dark corners of the universe, its unexplained phenomena, and the mysteries that surround us. V830 Tauri radio emissions. Something that is 2 million years old might seem ancient to us. In space, being 2 million years old makes a star extremely young. At exactly this age, T Tauri V830 Tau is a star with a similar mass to Jupiter and a fairly circular 4.93-day orbit according to recent observations. The reason this star fascinates astronomers, though, is its seemingly sporadic and intermittent radio emissions, detected at 6 and 8.4 gigahertz. It is not strange for magnetized exoplanets to emit at various radio frequencies, as seen with V830T. However, in this case, it is the first detected radio emissions from a planetary system outside of our own solar system which occurs around a star. Therefore, it has become a star of focus for many scientists, keen to better understand the interactions between this star and its planets. Modeling variables such as wind formation around the newborn host star, scientists at the likes of Harvard are conducting studies to simulate local conditions and the environment around V830T. Their findings to date are quite complex and technical, revolving around data pertaining to stellar radii, maximum frequency emissions, and polar planetary magnetic fields. There are more simple things they have discovered too. Firstly, for these radio emissions to have been detected here on Earth, which means passing through host star winds, the magnetic field of V830T and any nearby planets must be between 1.3 and 13 G. Similarly, they have been able to estimate thermal conditions based on wind factors, planetary radius, as well as likely orbital distance, thought to be 6.1 stellar radar, for those of you who are curious. Other reports cite the importance of such discoveries, being those giant planets with a tight parent planet orbit, have recently been found to orbit younger, hotter stars instead. Being young, this would include the likes of V830 Tau. With so much more to learn and understand about this star, many are excited at the potential to find out more about planetary formations and migrations of new solar systems. Asteroid barely missed Earth in November. Asteroid 2021 UA1. Asteroids are fascinating, and many are absolutely zero cause for concern in terms of hitting or harming the Earth, but every once in a while there will be one or two which come in just a bit too close for NASA's liking. Small asteroids a few meters in size pass between the Earth and our Moon's orbit several times a month. Meteoroids, asteroids less than 1 meter in diameter, hit the Earth's atmosphere and explore pretty much every day. With tens of thousands of small rocks passing through the atmosphere daily, mainly from Saturn's belt, this is no surprise to us, and none of these pose any threat to our safety here at home. Just a few months ago in November, an asteroid passed by Antarctica, missing the surface by a mere 1,800 miles, and scientists did not know about it until after the fact. But do not panic, although it came scarily close and closer than any have in quite some time. For asteroids to be classed a threat, they have to measure more than 460 feet in diameter, and this one, UA1, was just 6.6 feet. It would usually have been detected sooner than it was. Astronomers explained that it approached the Earth from its daytime side, in other words, from the direction of the sun, meaning it essentially came hurtling from a blind spot in our observation abilities. Furthermore, being so small, it would have been hard to detect and track. In fact, many small asteroids pass near to Earth without us realizing, scientists say. Regardless, as said, owing to its small size, it never would have been a proper threat anyway. For context, though, 1,800 miles is closer than most asteroids make it. A month after UA1 passed the Earth at 625,000 miles, and this was one of the closest anticipated encounters for 2021. Similarly, the next 4 asteroids expected to come close to Earth, according to NASA's Asteroid Watch dashboard, will not come within 3 million miles of Earth. While it is shocking to think that an asteroid came so close to Earth without our prior knowledge, it's still reassuring to know that it was too small to have done any damage. And the next asteroid expected to actually collide with the Earth is thought to be some 300 years away, meaning we are all safe. Astronomers find mysterious cavity in space 500 light-years away. Although 500 light-years away, this last discovery is actually from within our own Milky Way. Astronomers have recently discovered an enormous cavity which they believe was the result of a stellar explosion millions of years ago. Described as a bubble-shaped void, They discovered the cavity between the Perseus and Taurus constellations. More precisely, it was found in a star-forming region, which is a cluster of gas and dust, which to date scientists believe form from supernovas. Having mapped the Perseus-Taurus constellation star-forming region, data collected by the Gaia spacecraft revealed the huge cavity which previously went unnoticed by 2D mapping systems. Scientists had long been aware of this star region. The depth and thickness of the molecular clouds associated with the region had been a mystery time. There are a couple of current theories as to the presence of the void within this star-forming region. Either it is possible that a supernova exploded at the core of the bubble, pushing gas outwards and expanding the cavity, or a series of supernovae over the period of millions of years created and added to it over time. Although they may not know for sure what caused this phenomenon, scientists are well aware of how much more there is to learn about the region and supernova-related events in general. Discovering this void while trying to understand how gas and dust are released and rearranged during stellar explosions, they now want to turn their focus to the chain of events triggered by the ending of a star and the resulting supernova explosion. But what do you make of these outer space discoveries? The world is a wondrous and confusing place. The advancement of science and history and expansion of our knowledge of the Earth gives us a more comprehensive view of our world than ever before. So today, we'll be taking a look at the mysterious discoveries of the world. Mysterious giant blinking object has been detected near our galaxy's center. Nothing is more mysterious and unreachable than space. Despite decades of intensive study and research, scientists have only explored about 4% of the visible universe. An estimated 25,000 light-years from Earth, astronomers have found a star that appeared to blink out of existence for several months before suddenly reappearing. This unique star was affectionately named BVV WIT 08 and is thought to belong to a completely new class of stars altogether. This newly discovered star type is unexplainably enormous, reportedly 100 times the size of our Sun. While the blinking is thought to be caused by an unknown orbiting body that eclipses the star once every few decades. The name of the star appears to be a highly scientific smash-up of important letters. WIT actually stands for "What is this?" The case of VVV WIT 08 has baffled astronomers. Not only is this star the first of its kind, but no one can explain what exactly could be eclipsing it from sight. The most prominent theory is that this orbiting object could be a planet or even another star, surrounded by a thick, opaque disk of dust locked in an orbit around VVV WIT 08. This theory is supported by the discovery of a few other giant stars that disappear for months or even years at a time. The most famous example is Epsilon Auriga, a supergiant star that is nearly eclipsed for up to 730 days at a time. And another giant star known as TYC 2505671 is regularly eclipsed for a whopping 3.5 years. There are certainly more to be found, but the challenge now is in figuring out what the hidden companions are and how they came to be surrounded by disks, despite orbiting so far from the giant star, said astronomer Lee Smith of the University of Cambridge. In doing so, we might learn something new about how these kinds of systems evolve. Betelgeuse's Great Dimming Event was caused by a massive dust cloud. Betelgeuse is one of the brightest and arguably the best-known star in the sky. So when this famous star began dimming dramatically in the fall of 2019, it is no surprise the world held its breath. By February 2020, it had lost almost all of its normal luminosity, and in less than a year, one of the brightest stars known to man became a dimly lit remnant of its past self. Astronomers everywhere began clamoring for the answers, and now it seems they may have solved the mystery. Betelgeuse, which constitutes the shoulder of the famous constellation Orion, is commonly described as a bloated red supergiant. It is speculated that this massive star will die in an exhibitionist-style supernova explosion sometime soon. When the supergiant began to dim, many believed that this was the beginning of the end for the star. The site was named the Great Dimming, and astronomers prepared for the supernova they thought was soon to follow. It was a welcome shock to all space lovers alike when Betelgeuse bounced back later that year. The star was shining at its historical brightness by April 2020, and astronomers again were left with nothing but questions. World-renowned astrophysicists at the Paris Observatory and University PSL studied Betelgeuse before and during the Great Dimming, using multiple instruments installed at the European Southern Observatory's Very Large Telescope in Chile. Led by Miguel Montage, a team of highly knowledgeable scientists crafted datasets suggesting a likely answer as to what caused the Great Dimming. The research found that Betelgeuse had ejected a huge cloud of gas just a short period before the dawn of the Great Dimming. Then, in the fall of 2019, convective cooling in the star's atmosphere along with the star's regular pulsations dropped the temperature in the cloud's surroundings, causing the surrounding gas to condense into dust. This dust is theorized to have blocked the light of Betelgeuse to be seen from Earth. Our results confirm that the Great Dimming is not an indication of Betelgeuse's imminent explosion as a supernova. Montage and his team wrote in their finalized study, has opened the door to uncover some of space's most securely kept secrets. Anytime a mystery is solved, all new questions suddenly come to fruition. This exquisitely detailed study of Betelgeuse's unexpected behavior lays the groundwork for unraveling the properties of an entire population of stars, wrote astronomer Levesque. Next-generation facilities focused on monitoring stellar brightness over time or on studying the signatures of dust in the infrared spectra of stars could prove invaluable for expanding the lessons learned here. What happens to our consciousness when we sleep? The human body continues to amaze and perplex us all. It is essentially a machine that works 24/7 only to slightly power down during sleep. While our muscles rest, our essential organs continue without pause. The most pressing question for scientists that study sleep is this: what happens to our minds while we sleep? Have tried to answer this question, and it seems that they are inching closer to the answer. A new theory has been formed as to where our brains go when we fall asleep. According to recent studies, a supernetwork in the center of the brain is the missing piece to this puzzle. Researchers in Finland have discovered a central core network brimming with the same activity regardless of whether a person goes to sleep normally or loses consciousness due to anesthesia. It seems that these natural mechanisms provide the powerhouse to human consciousness. Two groundbreaking experiments from the University of Turku have found new information on this phenomenon. These experiments have revealed the inner workings of the brain's central core network for the first time. They have done so by focusing on the connection of consciousness to how people respond when they are asleep. One of these experiments studied the brain activity of people who had been anesthetized, while the other examined how brains respond to natural sleep. With the use of brain imaging and questioning the patient after waking up, scientists found something rather peculiar. The questions that these scientists asked consisted of how aware were you of your surroundings and what did you dream of? Researchers have found that natural sleep and experimental anesthesia are powerful research tools in the study of human consciousness. In the past, it has been assumed that a lack of meaningful response is proof of unconsciousness. However, discoveries have shown that being unresponsive does not necessarily mean that the patient is unconscious. The researchers have focused their efforts on networks in the brain that they believe are linked with human consciousness. They study these areas by measuring the brain activity of patients as they fall asleep and those who undergo anesthesia via a PET scan. PET scans involve an imaging test that allows doctors to see how your brain is functioning. Scientists have located specific regions in the brain that experienced less blood flow when one of the volunteers lost consciousness and more blood flow when they regained awareness. It has been found that general anesthesia closely resembles normal sleep in a way that has been previously disputed, says Harry Sheening. As a result of the minimal delay between the awakenings and the interviews, current results add significantly to our understanding of the nature of the anesthetic state. Against a common belief, full loss of consciousness is not needed for successful general anesthesia, as it is sufficient to just disconnect the patient's experiences from what is going on in the operating room, explains Annalata Schoen. But what do you make of these discoveries? Group of scientists have just announced that they plan to send Earth's location out into the cosmos, seemingly ignoring the late Stephen Hawking and his comments about how we should be careful about how we approach the cosmos. The beacon in the Galaxy project appears to be an updated Arecibo message, which for those unaware was a broadcast that came from the Arecibo radio telescope, and the message was to let anything out there listening know that we are here. The message that was sent out was a simple one. It consisted of a pictorial message giving basic information about humans and the planet we live on. An abstract from this new project titled A Beacon in the Galaxy, updated Arecibo message for potential FAST and SETI projects, reads as follows. An updated binary-coded message is being developed for transmission to extraterrestrial intelligences in the Milky Way galaxy. The proposed message includes basic mathematical and physical concepts to establish a universal means of communication, followed by information on the biochemical composition of life on Earth, the solar system's timestamp position in the Milky Way relative to known clusters, as well as digitized depictions of the solar system and Earth's surface. The message concludes with images of the human form, along with an invitation for any receiving intelligences to respond. End quote. Not everyone has been open to the idea of sending out this into the cosmos, though. With some saying, is it a good idea to be sending images of a man and a woman into space, along with information about our solar system, DNA, the various telescopes we have, and also the composition of Earth? This led some to question whether the authors took into consideration whether hostile civilizations might be out there, and whether this was the best message to be sending, noting that it could leave us open. One user had this to say, knowing how humans aren't how we've treated our own kind, why do we think that civilizations would be any better? I respect the optimism, but did it cross their minds that there could be more hostile civilizations out there? Not sure how to feel about this one. Others also pointed out that the late Stephen Hawking warned against these kinds of actions, detailing that we need to be careful when approaching this subject. One of the most surprising of Dr. Stephen Hawking's predictions was his sudden transparency before his passing, and this was in regards to alien intervention. In fact, the late scientist claimed that alien contact would most likely occur within the next century, and went on to warn us about the potential disaster of trusting an alien species, and explains that not only should we remain vigilant, but that an advanced race would have motives that may be unpredictable, claiming further that any intelligent alien species could not ever be fully trusted, saying that we should stay away from sending messages into space because we don't know what's out there, and could be massively unprepared if something ever did answer. This is an interesting prediction and may very well be the case over this next century's developments, since space-throwing technologies are being worked on. Dr. Hawking said the following in regards to these messages. If you look at history, contact between humans and less intelligent organisms have often been disastrous from their point of view, and encounters between civilizations with advanced versus primitive technologies have gone badly further less advanced. Dr. Stephen Hawking also seemed to have had a tremendous amount of optimism relative to the coming ages of technological advancements and exploration when it came to space travel. Dr. Hawking argued that if such an extinction-level event can be overcome, not only will humanity become far more united in its overall pursuits and motivations, but we will be a spacefaring species, one that will be able to keep afloat by mining for renewable resources. Dr. Stephen Hawking most notably refers to us as planetary colonizers, and makes the overall suggestion that not only will Earth be our home, but many other of the celestial bodies in our solar system may find themselves colonized equally as well. This appears to be an accurate prediction, as many new space agencies are gearing up to launch various missions. In fact, many estimates for project deadlines put the first colonies on Mars to occur in 2030, which is merely within the next 10 years. Not only this, but NASA has begun the process and paperwork as well as research necessary for long-term inhabitation of spacefaring ships, with efforts being made to replicate the famous Von Braun research station, along with the robotics and developments necessary to create fully sustainable life supports. The abstract continues with the following. These powerful new beacons, the successors to the Arecibo radio telescope, which transmitted the 1974 message upon which this expanded communication is based upon, can carry forward Arecibo's legacy into the 21st century with this equally well-constructed communication from Earth's technological civilization. Others have said that it's incredible that we're sending out these types of missions into space, and that it shows that we're ready to take on the final frontier, while other users weren't so sure about these actions. again questioned whether sending out all of this information was the best idea, with some noting that it seems like we're banking on the fact that advanced civilizations will be peaceful. Amelia Ha, who is involved in the project, said the following: Stephen Hawking's quote is absolutely inspiring, and my personal conclusion was that any species capable of understanding and interpreting our message will likely be equally, if not more intelligent and wary of our existence. Thus, as long as contact is approached with a clear sun of peace, it can be assumed that the hopeful possibilities and discoveries that come alongside communication outweigh the risk. Another user had this to say: let's just hope that nothing malicious detects these messages, as we've basically given them a breakdown of what we look like, our DNA, and where we come from. So what do you make of this new project? And do you think we should be sending out messages into the cosmos? The scientific community is constantly on the verge of discovering life-changing new truths about our universe. With each new discovery, we are getting closer to understanding this vast creation that surrounds us. More and more, scientists are bravely exploring the unknown inner universe that we still have so much to learn about. Whether on Earth or outer space, there is always something new for us to uncover. So today, we are going to look at 3 discoveries in the field of astronomy that are shaking up the scientific world. Astronomers detect exocomet orbiting a sun. NASA's Planet Hunting Telescope, TESS, was recently able to help scientists make an exciting discovery. The Transiting Exoplanet Survey satellite was launched in 2018 for the purpose of searching for exoplanets in a region about 400 times larger than the area explored in the Kepler mission. NASA scientists view TESS as the next step in planet searching outside of our solar system. And they also hope TESS will find planets that can support life. Already demonstrating TESS's potential, recently astronomers discovered the first exocomet using TESS's data. Exocomets have previously been detected in the electromagnetic spectra of stars. According to scientists, as comets pass between the stars and us, the quality of life changes, allowing astronomers to detect its presence. This time around, the star that the exocomet was detected orbiting was Beta Pictoris, a young star at 20 million years old, located about 63 light-years away. Due to its youth, it is surrounded by a disk of debris that includes hundreds of comets that were detected using the spectroscopic method. Interestingly, the discovery of the comet using TESS data was made through a white light curve detection, a whole different ballgame. According to astronomer Matthew Kenworthy of Leiden University in the Netherlands, astronomers have already seen hints of exocomets near Beta Pictoris using a spectrograph. However, a white light curve detection was predicted by another astronomer 20 years ago, and the curve detected with this comet coincides with the computer model he made all those years ago. This fact provides even greater proof of the existence of the exocomet. Due to the shape of the light curve detected by TESS, astronomers think they may have found multiple exocomets. The light curve discovered by TESS is actually not new to astronomers. TESS's predecessor Kepler had already spotted 3 exocomet events. Although Kepler's discovery was remarkable, it did not detect these light curves until the end of its 10-year lifespan in space. TESS discovered the light curve only a year into its mission. According to Grant Kennedy of Warwick University, TESS can observe stars in an unbiased way compared to Kepler. For example, while Kepler focused on older stars that were similar to the Sun, TESS is able to observe young stars like Beta Pictoris. Now that astronomers have made this discovery, the next step for them is to search for more light curves to try to understand the role that comets play in the early stages of planetary systems. According to Kennedy, astronomers would like to eventually measure the compositions of these exocomets in the future. He explained, in the solar system it doesn't look like comets were a major contributor to Earth's water, but this may not be true around other stars. Scientists are rightfully looking at this discovery as an exciting development that may help unlock puzzles that have plagued scientists for years and might get us closer to understanding the universe around us. Hundreds of billions of galaxies in the universe. The Milky Way galaxy is undoubtedly the most famous galaxy. Its existence brings on the question just how many galaxies exist. Counting galaxies, the vast collection of stars that populate our universe, Seems like an impossible feat. The first deterrent is simply how many there may be. Once we get to counting multiple billions of galaxies, the maths gets a little tricky. Another deterrent to finding the real number are the limitations of our instruments. In order to get a good view of space, a telescope needs to have an aperture about the diameter of the primary lens, and to avoid distortion from Earth's air, it must be located above the atmosphere. Despite the difficulty of counting galaxies, scientists have not been deterred. An example of astronomers attempting a count is how they used an image made from the combination of 10 years from the Hubble Space Telescope called Hubble Extreme Deep Field, or XDF. The telescope focused on a patch of sky for 50 days of repeated visits. Through many hours of collecting faint light, the XDF was able to detect thousands of galaxies, making it the most in-depth image of the universe ever taken at the time. The Hubble Space Telescope had been an incredible source of information for astronomers in its 19 years of shuttle missions. In its 5th year, astronomers pointed the telescope at a region called Ursa Major, and in just 10 days of observations it found about 3,000 galaxies in one frame. Hubble was also pointed twice at a spot in the Fornax constellation and at a portion of the ultra-deep field. With each experiment, thousands of galaxies were detected. Due to the sheer number of galaxies detected in multiple small regions, Hubble revealed about 100 billion galaxies. However, some experts expect the number to increase to 200 billion once telescope technology improves. Huge explosion in space explains mystery star. Previously unknown secrets of the Milky Way galaxy may have been revealed by a huge explosion about 10 times more energetic than a supernova. Astronomers from Australia's Arc Centre of Excellence in All-Sky Astrophysics in 3 dimensions, or Astro 3D, may have discovered evidence of the destruction of a rapidly spinning star's collapse. This phenomenon is described as magnetorotational hypernova. This cataclysm that was previously unknown may be the reason that there is an unusually large presence of some materials in another Milky Way star. The star in question, SMSS, contains larger amounts of metal objects such as zinc, europium, and uranium compared to other stars the same age. The materials that are needed to produce these elements, neutron-star mergers, do not explain their presence, but astronomers have another explanation for the high levels of neutrons. They suspect that only an extreme collapse of a young star, along with the presence of a rapid rotation and a strong magnetic field, can explain these extra neutrons. Although the star is deemed a metal-poor star because it has an extremely low iron-to-hydrogen ratio compared to the Sun, it also has large amounts of some heavier elements. That makes this star extremely rare. Now, rewinding us back to the beginning of the universe, the first stars were composed of almost only hydrogen and helium. After they collapsed and exploded, they produced heavier elements that were incorporated into the next stars in small amounts. The rates and energies of most of these collapsed stars also don't explain the number of heavy elements in SMSS J200322541142033. All this evidence points to one thing, according to Professor Chaike Kobayashi from the University of Hertfordshire. The professor explained that this core collapse explosion of a strongly magnetized fast-spinning massive star indicates that there was a different kind of hypernova producing all stable elements in the periodic table at once. Although hypernova have been known of for decades, this discovery is the first time it has been mixed with strong magnetism and rapid rotation. According to astronomer Dr. David Young, it's an explosive end for the star. We calculate that 13 billion years ago, J200325411420033 formed out of a chemical soup that contained the remains of this type of hypernova. No one's ever found this phenomenon before. This discovery is a giant step towards finding an explanation for the formation of heavy elements in a young universe and is incredibly exciting for the field of astronomy. Even today, with all of our technology and knowledge, we are still uncovering amazing secrets about the universe around us. And what do you make of these recent discoveries? Our world is always moving forwards, continuously creating and producing new innovative products and technologies. But our modern research and developments extend beyond our latest phone model or the newest medicine breakthrough. Some of the most fundamental research we carry out today focuses on unveiling past mysteries and rediscovering the lives of societies who shaped the world as we know it. From ancient societies, traditions, and rituals, to places we did not know existed. There are many unanswered questions within our history books. So today, we'll be taking a look at 3 recent discoveries that have provided us with a glimpse into human history. Karanka's Impact Event. The Karanka's Impact Event refers to the fall of the Karanka's chondritic meteorite on the Earth's surface. The meteorite fell near the village of Karancas in Peru. The location of the fall was close to the Bolivian border and Lake Titicaca. The fall created a small crater impact on the clay soil and scorched earth around its location. A local official named Marco Limache observed that boiling water started coming out of the crater, and particles of rock and cinders were found nearby, as fetid, noxious gases spewed from the crater. The surface impact was above 3,800 meters. The diameter of the meteorite is about 13.5 meters with a depth of 4.5 meters. The crash occurred on September 15, 2007, around 11:40 in the local time of Peru. The meteorite was chondritic, meaning it is a stony meteorite that has not been modified by either melting or differentiation in nature. Following the crash, a group of geologists working with the Peruvian Geophysics Institute released a report. Immediately after the confirmation by the Peruvian astrophysicists on the 20th of September, X-ray laboratory analysis was carried out at the Mayo San Andrés University Faculty of Geological Sciences in La Paz, Bolivia. They subsequently published a report of their findings on analysis of some of the small samples recovered from the material around the site of impact. The report said that some minerals were detected in the sample collected. Some of the minerals detected on analysis included iron, nickel, cobalt, and traces of iridium. All of these elements detected were typical compositional elements of meteorites. Another vital detail that were published alongside the report was that the quantitative proportions and phosphorus discovered in those samples were incompatible with the composition of rocks that we have on the surface of our Earth. The meteorite was subsequently accepted as a standard meteorite after it was officially certified by the Meteoritical Society. The certification was carried out by a team of scientists working at the University of Arizona. It was described as an ordinary chondrite, an H. chondrite breccia, containing clasts of petrologic types 4 to 5. The formal classification is H4 to 5. It was also determined that the meteorite had experienced a considerable level of shock before ultimately hitting the Earth. More analysis was carried out by NASA, Japanese, and British researchers in which they came up with their findings that were backed up by data. The findings were similar. Sometime after the impact, some of the villagers who approached the site of impact suddenly developed some forms of sickness that could not be explained from the normal observable facts initially. The villagers developed a wide array of symptoms as a result of the sickness which initially was unknown. About 2 days later after the impact, some Peruvian scientists confirmed to the Peruvian public and the world at large that there had been a meteorite crash. Their confirmation helped to silence widespread speculation that it may have been a geophysical rather than a celestial event. Consequently, even after Peruvian scientists seemed to have intervened, further information concerning the cause of the mysterious sickness that struck some of the members of the community was still unknown. But on further analysis and evaluation, it was discovered that the groundwater in the local area contained arsenic compounds, and the illness was subsequently believed to have been caused by arsenic poisoning incurred when residents of the area inhaled the vapor of the boiling arsenic-contaminated water. Mungo Man and Woman. Ancient skeletons help us to piece together the long history of our ancestors and allow us to plot out the evolutionary timeline of our species. But no skeletons have garnered quite the attention from the scientific community like the Mungo Man and Mungo Woman. Found in the dry, deserted bed of the evaporated Lake Mungo, the discoveries were kick-started by Jim Bowler with the University of Melbourne in 1969. Lake Mungo is located in southeastern Australia and is around 760 kilometers or 470 miles due west of Sydney. The lake is also one of 17 included in the World Heritage Wallandra Lakes region. The lake dried up around 14,000 years ago, but it was in 1968 that the significance of the lake became clear when Jim Bowler managed to uncover the skeleton of an Aboriginal Australian woman. Carbon dating showed that the skeleton was 40,000 years old, making them the oldest remains to have ever been found in Australia, and demonstrating that humans had been on the continent for longer than we had originally believed. The bones of the Mongo woman were also burnt, which also makes the discovery the earliest known example of cremation and ceremonial burial anywhere in the world. The Mongo man was similarly found to have come from the same period as the previous skeleton. Since the massive discovery, even more human bones and cultural objects have been discovered in the crescent-shaped sand dunes of Lake Mungo. The reason why this area is so significant to archaeologists is because it offers a detailed fossil record of Aboriginal life in the region. Scientists are able to observe how people adapted to the changing climate of the day, as well as the drying of Lake Mungo. Some of the other archaeological finds include stone tools, food waste, and fireplaces. Amazingly, in 2003, a series of footprints left by the Wallandra people were discovered and were dated to being 20,000 years old. Today, the Mungo discoveries are an invaluable archaeological resource, as well as a significant cultural and spiritual reference point for Aboriginal Australians. In a modern context, we can see that descendants from the country's original inhabitants, such as the Pikanji, Nyampa, and Muti people, have an intrinsic right and claim to the Australian continent. Mungo man and woman. Ancient skeletons help us to piece together the long history of our ancestors and allow us to plot out the evolutionary timeline of our species. But no skeletons have garnered quite the attention from the scientific community like the Mungo man and Mungo woman. Found in the dry, deserted bed of the evaporated Lake Mungo, the discoveries were kick-started by Jim Bowler with the University of Melbourne in 1969. Lake Mungo is located in southeastern Australia and is around 760 kilometers or 470 miles due west of Sydney. The lake is also one of 17 included in the World Heritage Willandra Lakes region. The lake dried up around 14,000 years ago, but it was in 1968 that the significance of the lake became clear when Jim Bowler managed to uncover the skeleton of an Aboriginal Australian woman. Carbon dating showed that the skeleton was 40,000 years old, making them the oldest remains to have ever been found in Australia, and demonstrating that humans had been on the continent for longer than we had originally believed. The bones of the Mongo woman were also burnt, which also makes the discovery the earliest known example of cremation and ceremonial burial anywhere in the world. The Mongo man was similarly found to have come from the same period as the previous skeleton. Since the massive discovery, even more human bones and cultural objects have been discovered in the crescent-shaped sand dunes of Lake Mungo. The reason why this area is so significant to archaeologists is because it offers a detailed fossil record of Aboriginal life in the region. Scientists are able to observe how people adapted to the changing climate of the day, as well as the drying of Lake Mungo. Some of the other archaeological finds include stone tools, food waste, and fireplaces. Amazingly, in 2003, a series of footprints left by the Wallandra people were discovered and were dated to being 20,000 years old. Today, the Mungo discoveries are an invaluable archaeological resource, as well as a significant cultural and spiritual reference point for Aboriginal Australians. In a modern context, we can see that descendants from the country's original inhabitants, such as the Pikanji, Nyampa, and Muti people, have an intrinsic right and claim to the Australian continent. But what do you make of these interesting discoveries? NASA's easily the biggest, most influential space program in the world, and while others are coming forward with impressive new tech and research, NASA continues to develop their equipment and push limits further than we ever thought they could. We've all come to know and love the Hubble Space Telescope, which launched on April 24, 1990, but scientists and researchers said that it was time for an update, and this comes in the form of the James Webb Telescope. An impressive new telescope ready to update our telescope tank. The James Webb Telescope costs around $10 billion, or around 7.2 billion pounds. While the sky-high budget allows for the latest features and most advanced equipment, it also comes with high stakes. Unsurprisingly, with such a huge budget and also a huge amount of advanced goals, the James Webb Telescope, also known as the JWST, is the most complicated NASA venture in recent years, so it's only realistic to expect there to be some delays, dilemmas, and concerns involved whilst being developed. As of right now, those scientists are looking towards the future and have announced that the James Webb Telescope may be able to detect extraterrestrial life based on air pollution, with NASA scientists saying that it might be able to pick up on this pollution as it's being released directly from their planets. The scientists have also been vocal about how the James Webb Telescope will be launching us into a new era, one where we could realistically encounter advanced life forms, or at least traces of these civilizations, and this raised an interesting question. Are we ready for such a discovery? The study by the Blue Marble Space Institute of Science in Seattle said that by using the James Webb Telescope, scientists and researchers have the ability to search for industrial pollutants, saying that these can be detected around exoplanets. In the last few years alone, NASA has said that more than 4,000 exoplanets have been discovered, and these are just the confirmed ones. Further saying that there's thousands of other candidate exoplanet detections that require further observations. An exoplanet is any planet beyond our solar system, and as mentioned, it's important to note that these are just the confirmed ones, with scientists estimating that Kepler data calculated that the Milky Way galaxy could have around 6 billion Earth-like planets, with around 300 million of these being habitable. While the number of planets residing in the observable universe is estimated to be around 700 quintillion. Scientists working on the study have said that if the James Webb Telescope was to detect chlorofluorocarbons from distant worlds, then this could mean that they're habitable, and that further research could be carried out in these regions to see if any more signs can be detected. The researchers involved in the study said the following. CFCs are a notable example of a technosignature on Earth, and the detection of CFCs on a planet like TRAPPIST 1e would be difficult to explain through any biological or geological features we know of today. Our civilization continues along a path of growth in both population and energy consumption, while we're only beginning to understand the extent to which our technology could be detectable at astronomical distances. Continued exploration of how the past, present, and future of civilization will affect Earth's detectability remains an important objective for understanding the prevalence of biosignatures and technosignatures in our galaxy. In this study, we've shown that with the launch of the James Webb Telescope, humanity may be very close to an important milestone. One where we're capable of detecting from nearby stars not just powerful deliberate transients and high directional transmissions like our own, but consistent passive technosignatures of the same strength as our own. The detectability of CFCs in an Earth-like planet's atmosphere is strongly dependent on the radius and spectrum of the host star, and the TRAPPIST-1 system in particular is extremely favorable. End quote. A 2020 study found that there are 1,004 star systems that have a direct view of planet Earth, being in close enough proximity to see and study our home, as well as being able to detect chemical traces of our presence. In a turn of events, instead of trying to find alien life, researchers are now looking at what life could be finding us. Recent searches for other life have been focused on the dimming of exoplanets as they pass between star and the telescope that's observing it. However, now researchers have looked to which planets are aligned well enough to detect Earth, or more specifically figure out that we have life. Lisa Koltneger, the lead author of the paper, stated that if observers were out there searching, they would be able to see signs of a biosphere in the atmosphere of our pale blue dawns. Of the 3,185 star systems found outside of our solar system since 1993, 1,004 have been determined close enough to and positioned accurately enough to perceive signs of our existence on Earth. This information has been provided through the Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, also known as TESS. With the James Webb Telescope, these exoplanets will now be explored in greater detail, possibly signaling out gases within the atmosphere that could indicate life, such as methane or oxygen. On the flip side, however, there is the possibility that aliens could beat us to the punch. If they had their own version of the James Webb Telescope, they could be making advancements to communicate with us at this very moment. Despite there being 1,004 possible star systems within close enough proximity to observe us here on Earth, this does not mean that they're equipped with life to conduct this type of research. For example, 5% of the stars are too young for intelligent species to have evolved, regardless as to the environmental conditions of the planets orbiting it. This development opens up more avenues to researching alien life, with the possibility of the James Webb Telescope bringing major breakthroughs in the near future. So what do you make of these interesting discoveries? And do you think the James Webb Telescope will finally confirm that we're not alone in the universe? Typical missing 411 cases, the disappearance of Gunnar Peterson would also feature a heartfelt recovery, with Gunnar appearing to have been in perfect health at the time of his recovery. His account for exactly what caused his disappearance is a matter even more difficult to explain, however, and is often remarked as one of the first true missing 411 cases dating as far back as the early 1950s. According to the Gunnar Peterson report, back on the 6th of August during the year 1950, Mr. Peterson had traveled to the Covell National Forest, located in the state of Washington only 2 miles south of the Canadian border, with his entire family, to engage in a nice relaxing weekend vacation of hiking up and down the Churchill Mountain. Once at the National Forest, it became apparent to the family that the native wild-grown huckleberries were in season and ripe for picking. This sudden realization led the family to planning their date around picking huckleberries together on the side of Churchill Mountain, and spending the rest of the day having a picnic at the summit. Unfortunately for the Peterson family, as the group of picking huckleberries near the top of the mountain in open areas were within the line of sight of each other, the family suddenly noticed that the fireman husband Gunnar Peterson was no longer within the sight of the family. Wondering where he'd gone off to, Gunnar's daughter Mrs. W. 8 Graves had called out to her father several times, but got no response. At first, the family was not worried about his temporary absence, believing that perhaps he had decided to use the restroom nearby, or ventured into a more secluded area where he'd no longer be within earshot of the group. As the day stretched on, however, the group grew increasingly worried, as every member continued searching and calling out to Gunnar, but getting no response. After seeing no sign of Gunnar for over 3 hours, the family would immediately call the local Stephen County Sheriff's Department and report 65-year-old Gunnar as missing. Within only a few hours of being alerted, Sheriff Barrow Warren would bring together several dozen search and rescue volunteers, made up of local residents, fellow law enforcement officers, the National Park Forest Service personnel, and several dozen soldiers from the local military base. The first night, the search and rescue volunteers focused on coming through the area where he'd last been seen with his family, following any trails and areas that connected with wild huckleberry bushes that the father could have ventured off into. Despite looking through every open huckleberry bush, they found no sign of Gunnar. After the first 2 days of searching, law enforcement and search and rescue volunteers were growing increasingly desperate due to the sudden drop in temperatures in the area and the light rain. Given the fact that the mountain stands at a height of almost 4,800 feet in elevation and is filled with layers of lush thick forest and hundreds of small running bodies of water, search and rescue teams were growing increasingly concerned with the possibility of finding Gunnar Peterson alive, as they believed that the train would have made it incredibly difficult for Mr. Peterson to have safely made his way down the mountain, while lost and alone. By the 3rd day of Gunnar Peterson's disappearance, a specialized canine search and rescue team was employed in the search that had come from Idaho and eastern Washington. After the family supplied the dogs with clothes and shoes that Gunnar Peterson had worn, the dogs followed the sentry to the middle of a huckleberry bush path, where Mr. Peterson had been seen by his family. Oddly enough, the sheriff would remark that the canines seemed confused as to where the trail continued, and were unable to maintain gun ascent for long before losing it entirely. After 7 days of looking for Mr. Peterson, search and rescue volunteers started to give up hope on finding Mr. Peterson alive, causing the search efforts to slowly taper off, as law enforcement, military personnel, and Forest Servicemen had the primary goal of finding a body and no longer a living person. The search for Mr. Peterson would continue for another 3 days, until Gunnar's daughter and her husband would find Gunnar more than 5 miles away. According to Gunnar Peterson's daughter, She and her husband continued searching for her father in a circling radius that would lead them 5 miles away from the base of Churchill Mountain. As they were in the area, they started to notice a collection of abandoned houses and shacks, seemingly constructed in the middle of nowhere. According to the locals of the region, the houses had been constructed many years ago and were at the center of what was referred to as high strangeness, with many of the locals too scared or superstitious to venture into the areas. As they searched through the abandoned shacks, Gunner's daughter would find Gunner sleeping in one of the abandoned buildings, seemingly in perfect health. According to Gunner Peterson, he'd survived in the area for 10 days primarily by drinking rainwater and living off huckleberries as his main food source. Oddly enough, at the time of his recovery, Gunner Peterson had only been aware of 8 days that had passed and had no idea that he'd been missing for a little over 10 days since the search began. When search and rescue volunteers and investigators questioned Gunner Peterson as to how he appeared to have disappeared from the region, it became obvious that something far more bizarre had happened. Gunner Peterson claimed when talking to investigators that he'd been picking huckleberries with his family only a few feet from the group, when he suddenly felt a large mass strike the back of his head. He would then wake up sometime during the middle of the night in pitch-black darkness, believing that a falling limb or rock must have knocked him unconscious. Oddly enough, there were no marks of sign of damage against Mr. Peterson's head, and he'd been standing in an open field of bushes on the side of the highest point of the mountain, where any falling debris would have been difficult to explain. Even more bizarre, however, was that Mr. Peterson counted only 7 days having passed after he'd awoken from his unconscious state. This led him to believe that he must have been knocked unconscious for a period of over 2 days, as he was unable to account for 2 of the 10 days that had been missing, originally believing that he'd only been missing for 8 days. So what do you make of this mysterious disappearance? The Space Force is a space service branch of the U.S. Armed Forces, and as of right now has over 6,000 military personnel and over 70 space gyms. According to the Space Force's official website, they've said that the U.S. Space Force is a military service that organizes, trains, and equips space forces in order to protect U.S. and allied interests in space, and to provide space capabilities to the joint force. The United States Space Force's responsibilities will include developing Guardians, acquiring military space systems, maturing the military doctrine for space power, and organizing space forces to present our competent commands. Just recently, a United States Space Force officer, Lieutenant General Charles Salzman, who is the Deputy Chief of Space Operations for Operation Cyber and Nuclear, said that the U.S. had made a worrying discovery, going on to detail that China has a new hypersonic weapon system. General Chance then detailed that this craft has the ability to stay in space for a long period of time, going on to describe it as an orbital device. Operating systems within the United States are said to have detected this craft, with HEPO officials in the United States military detailing that at this time this hypersonic aircraft was in its testing phase, and that during one of these missions the U.S. detected that it had fired a missile that exceeded the speed of sound. General Chance said the following: "This is a categorically different system because a fractional orbit is different from suborbital. A fractional orbit means it can stay in orbit as long as the user determines, and then it deorbits it as part of its flight path." U.S. officials have detailed that the fractional orbital system allows craft to go into low Earth orbit, where it can then stay before it's told to deorbit for an attack. The main advantage of this is that the orbital flight path would not reveal the target's location, meaning that a surprise attack could be made without the target knowing. U.S. intelligence has said it's likely that this new hypersonic craft has done a number of revolutions around the world and has passed its testing stage. General Chance said this craft has the ability to spend a prolonged amount of time in space. Interestingly, retired Air Force General John Hyten also went on to detail this hypersonic aircraft, saying the following: "It went around the world, dropped off a hypersonic glide aircraft that glided all the way back to China, that then impacted a target in China." Not surprisingly, China's foreign minister denied these statements, saying that the alleged craft was actually just a missile. The official transcript reads as follows: "As we understand, this was a routine test of a space vehicle to verify technology of spacecraft's reusability." After separating from the space vehicle before its return, the supporting devices will burn up when it's falling into the atmosphere, and the debris will fall into the high seas. It's not a missile but a space vehicle. Interestingly, Chinese officials did not go into detail about how it got there in the first place. But U.S. intelligence has said they think that China is testing this new range of hypersonic aircrafts. As of right now, U.S. officials have said they're trying to track these objects as best they can. Just recently, the U.S. Air Force said that real-life force fields were on the horizon. According to the U.S. Air Force, force fields could become a reality in a future that's not so far away. An announcement from the Air Force Research Lab released a report in the early summer of 2021 that made the suggestion that force fields is within our reach, which seemed to be about to cross the threshold between our current weaponry and warfare tactics into the strange and somewhat frightening futuristic weapons we have, which up until now we've only been able to imagine. Of course, the mention of a force field was not the only aspect of the Air Force report worth discussing. Plenty of other updates and suggestions came along with this announcement, or discussing how the military industry complex plans on making the most out of direct energy weapons. The report presented the claim that the force field technology could be merely decades, if not years away from becoming a reality, and that as of right now we're at a, quote, tipping point in the development of weaponry, balancing the huge advancements that we see that are just around the corner, but with them out of reach enough that we can continue to develop the less revolutionary equipments that we already have in use. The potential force fields that we may be able to create sometime soon have been described as umbrella-like. Its purpose would unsurprisingly be to deflect missile attacks, localizing several directed energy weapons. In the initial phases, these weapons to make the force fields will be aided by vehicles that we mounted to. Though in the long term, after more success and as the force field research develops, it's hoped that they can be lifted into space, where a laser can attack within a set radius. The report stated the following: by 2060, a sufficiently large fleet or constellation of high-altitude systems could provide a missile defense umbrella. As part of a layer defense system, if such concepts prove affordable and necessary, this technology would certainly mark an impressive scientific turn. Though, like any new research, costs could leave the concept with a question mark. While many in the department in the field hope for this technology to come about in some form or another by 2060, we do not know how quickly these developments can take place between then and now. So predictions are currently little more than excited speculations and shocking new concepts. The current progress shows that there's a number of energy-directed weapons already under construction. It was announced back in 2021 that the U.S. Army is developing what they have dubbed the world's most powerful laser. This laser should be able to use various pulses and signals to interfere with enemy signals and, quote, vaporize targets. This laser has the catchy name of the Tactical Ultrashot Pulse Laser for Army platforms. The hope is that this overwhelming piece of equipment will be 1 million times more powerful than existing and therefore rival laser platforms. So what do you guys make of these recent announcements? Space has often been called the final frontier. Its wonders have sprawled entirely new branches of science for centuries, and despite everything we know about the galaxies, nebulae and supernovae that surround us, discoveries can still be made every day. What we have learned about our final frontier has told us more about our past, present, and future, setting our greatest minds to work, daring them to go further and tell us more about the mysteries of our universe. So today, we'll be scratching the surface of 3 noteworthy mysteries. Rare blast remains discovered in Milky Way's center. Astronomers have recently found the remnants of a supernova at the center of our very own galaxy, the Milky Way. This remnant, titled Sagittarius A East, was discovered using NASA's Chandra X-ray Observatory. Initially, astronomers classified this remnant as the remains of a massive star that exploded as a supernova. These kinds of explosions are not entirely uncommon, and so no one had trouble believing this conclusion. After analyzing the remnants even further, astronomers were able to conclude that this celestial object is the remains and byproduct of a totally different kind of supernova, the explosion of a white dwarf. White dwarfs are formed when stars such as our Sun have depleted all of their energy and become incredibly dense. To classify the type of supernova that created this celestial object, astronomers thought that it may have come from a type Ia supernova, which always send out the same amount of light despite their position in the universe. Since they are consistent in sending out light, these type Ia supernovae come in handy when trying to measure distances across the universe. After even further examination, scientists were able to conclude that this object was not the product of a type Ia supernova. Instead, it seems to be the product of type IX supernova. Like type Ia, these supernovae send out different amounts of light and have less powerful explosions. According to Dr. Ping Zhao of China's Nanjing University, scientists have found evidence of type IAX supernovae in other galaxies, but haven't identified evidence for one in the Milky Way until now. He also stated that this celestial in studying the ways in which white dwarfs explode. Xingqiu Liu of Caltech added that this result shows the diversity of types and causes of white dwarf explosions. If we're right about the identity of this supernova's remains, it would be the nearest known example to Earth. Scientists have postulated several theories trying to explain this celestial object, but this latest evidence suggests that all the previous theories have been wrong. Despite all that we know and have learned about outer space, this unknown celestial object floating in the Milky Way proves that we still have a lot to learn even when it comes to our very own galaxy. Missing black hole with 10 billion solar masses. When it comes to space, there is one thing that we have all heard about: black holes. Books, movies, and TV love to feature this celestial phenomenon. Though our grasp of understanding is rather tenuous, it seems that a black hole exists at the very center of each galaxy, drawing anything and everything into it with its unparalleled gravitational pull. As such, it seems that keeping track of black holes would be the easy part. If they are so huge, monumental, and powerful, how could one go missing? Even so, that is exactly what happened with this black hole. About a decade ago, Dr. Mark Postman, a member of the Space Telescope Science Institute, was surveying surrounding galaxies with the famous Hubble Space Telescope. While surveying, Dr. Postman found a supergiant galaxy now referred to as BCG with no black hole at the center. Indeed, the finding was exceedingly strange. An expert of galactic nuclei at the National Optical Infrared Astronomy Research Laboratory in Tucson, Arizona, Todd Lauer, added that the absence of the black hole was really unusual. According to everything we know about black holes, this supergiant galaxy must have one at its center. This black hole is expected to house 10 billion solar masses. While the black hole at the center of our own galaxy, the Milky Way, has only 4 billion. It seems impossible and unfathomable that a black hole of this size has simply evaded notice or attention. So what exactly is happening? Using the ideas postulated by three astronomers, Mitchell Bagelman, Martin Rees, and Robert, eventually combined and turned into nothing. Of course, if the burst was unequal on both sides, the impact could have sent one of the black holes flying through the galaxy. However, after analyzing and surveying a 2261 BCG even further, scientists found something interesting. The diffuse core of the galaxy seems to house 4 little knots of light, causing some to think that the black hole's gravitational pull is keeping the black hole. Sarah Birksballer of West Virginia University led a surveying team with the hopes of untangling what the 4 knots could be. They found that 2 of them were most likely 2 smaller galaxies existing inside the main galaxy. Hubble was unable to provide enough details on the other 2 knots to reach a sound conclusion. Luckily, Hubble's successor, the James Webb Space Telescope, was launched in late 2021. Astronomers are hopeful that a telescope of this power and magnitude will be able to describe the 4 knots in detail and tell us the location of the missing black hole. Despite how improbable it seems that a black hole housing 10 billion solar masses could evade detection for so long, it just goes to show that outer space holds more mysteries than we ever thought. NASA's spacecraft expected to find over 12,000 planets by 2024. Astronomers and scientists have been fascinated with the idea of other planets for decades, and new technologies have allowed us to discover, locate, and name thousands of planets that exist beyond our own solar system. And the search continues even now, with NASA's $287 million exoplanet hunting spacecraft TESS expected to discover 12,000 exoplanets by 2024. An exoplanet is any planet that exists outside of our solar system, and their existence has fascinated humans for years. Set into motion only a few short years ago, the Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite is a space telescope designed for the express purpose of finding these exoplanets spinning in our universe. TESS mission is the most ambitious exoplanet discovery mission to date, covering 400 times the space that the Kepler mission covered. So far, TESS has discovered almost 5,000 planets, including everything from ice worlds to gas giants. TESS has also located numerous super-Earth planets, with a mass higher than our Earth's, but lower than that of Neptune and Uranus. TESS has 3 scheduled missions, and using data based on TESS's previous discoveries, researchers at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology estimate that the spacecraft will discover thousands of other exoplanets. The total estimation comes to a whopping 12,500 planets that TESS is set to discover. And although the sheer number of planets is exciting, one of the most intriguing things about TESS's missions is that the spacecraft is likely to encounter numerous Earth-like exoplanets, that is, planets with a similar atmosphere and environment to our own. The research has not revealed anything yet. Some researchers are hopeful that TESS search will find the possibility of extraterrestrial life on these Earth-like exoplanets, such as alien microbes. But if learning, reading, and researching about outer space has taught us anything, it is how little we truly know in the scope of the universe. Despite centuries of studying and searching, we still know next to nothing about our celestial surroundings. What do you make of these mysteries? The world of science is one that never stays the same. With each new discovery, scientists learn more about our universe and what may be out there for them to explore. Each discovery demonstrates just how much remains unknown. And if we are lucky, new findings also provide clues that could help uncover even more secrets. The universe is an immense and fascinating place, but we still have so much to learn. That is why scientists are bravely forging forward to explore more of the unknown, and they are the reason we continue to uncover more mysteries every day. Whether we find these on our Earth or in outer space, we are constantly finding something new. So today we're going to research and explore 3 recent discoveries. Enigmatic DNA strands named Borgs assimilate genes. Scientists have done it again. An American research team has discovered a group of enigmatic DNA strands, or Borgs, named after an alien group that appeared in the television show Star Trek. According to Jill Banfield, a professor of microbial metagenomics, the name was chosen due to how the Borgs from Star Trek assimilated different species and cultures. That nickname proves to be a fitting one, as these mysterious strands of DNA assimilate genes from different organisms in their environment. This discovery made in a Californian backyard has the potential to explain more about the evolution of microorganisms and how they interact within their ecosystems. This structure of DNA consists of close to 1 million base pairs, and in their investigation, scientists discovered more secrets behind these Borgs. More than half of the genes in their DNA sequence were new, and the structures seemed to be able to self-replicate due to having mirrored sequences at the end of each strand. Additionally, by looking into different DNA databases, scientists identified 19 sequences that resembled their discovery. Scientists have also noted that Borgs belong to a class of structures called extrachromosomal elements. These ECEs are found on the outside of chromosomes that contain most of the genetic material of an organism. ECEs tend to be large and self-replicating. However, the Borgs were found to be much larger than the average ECE, making these DNA strands even more mysterious. One of the most incredible aspects of this discovery is that Borgs happen to have a lot of the identical gene sequences from other microbes and elements. This makes nickname Borgs a fitting one, as researchers have interpreted their findings to mean that Borgs have assimilated these genes and elements. The broader implication of the Borgs remains unknown, although the researchers speculated that they could have long-term biogeochemical consequences, such as reducing methane fluxes. If this is true, Borgs could play a role in important climate implications. With everything the researchers uncovered, The fact that these DNA strands were found in a Californian backyard just adds to this story's incredibility. China's U-2-2 rover beams back rugged images of the far side of the moon. Moving on to a recent space discovery is how China's U-2-2 rover has returned images of its more than 3 years of travel across the far side of the moon, known for its harsh environment. In these new images released by OurSpace, a Chinese channel affiliated with the China National Space Administration, scientists received insight into the rover's 3-year journey. The images show panoramic views of the far side of the moon's surface that were previously unseen because the moon's far side is not visible from Earth. Blocking visibility is the fact that the moon is tidally locked with Earth. On top of these groundbreaking images, one of the biggest stories to come out of this mission was when the Chinese team operating U-2-2 reported the sighting of a hut-like structure that led many people to believe that the mysterious object could be a crashed ship or an alien object. However, by nearing the structure, the team concluded it was just another lunar boulder. Despite this disappointment, this mission has been an incredible feat of scientific brilliance. U-2-2 landed on the far side of the moon in 2019 on top of the Chang'e 4 lander, making this pair the first spacecraft to land and operate on the hidden atmosphere of the moon. According to data from China's Lunar Exploration Ground Application System, since landing, the solar-powered U-22 has traveled more than 3,000 feet across the Von Karman crater. U-22 has made multiple discoveries during its mission, such as finding material that is potentially from underneath the moon's crust, as well as glass spheres that were likely created by meteor impacts. U-22 and Chang'e lander have already surpassed their designed lifetimes of 3 months for U-22 and 1 year for Chang'e 4, making the mission even more of an incredible feat than originally expected. One of the reasons for this mission is because of the desire of many countries to reconquer the moon. Many researchers hope to send humans to these regions in the near future, and they have been studying the far side of the moon to make this hope a reality. Since the United States landed Apollo 11 on the moon in 1969, people have been fascinated by what else we may be able to discover in outer space. As much as the moon landing was an incredible step for mankind, we have yet to really explore even a fraction of the lunar surface. Future missions will no doubt be exhilarating for all of humanity. Liquid-filled canyons on Titan, another recent space discovery, is how a team of researchers found that Saturn's largest moon Titan is full of deep, Lexus canyons that make this large moon look almost like Earth. Titan is a cold and icy planet with rivers of methane, a far cry from our warm Earth that is filled with rivers of water. The research team has found that these canyons and channels on Titan form a network of rivers that they have named vidflumina. These canyons are roughly half a mile wide and between 800 and 2,000 feet deep. Similar to how the Amazon River flows into the Atlantic, these rivers on Titan flow into its largest sea, Legia Mare. While researchers know that these rivers are filled with liquid methane hydrocarbons, more research is needed to fully understand how the rivers flow. These observations would not have been possible without the data collected in 2013 by NASA's Cassini spacecraft that studied the topography of Titan. Yet, despite all of the information scientists have been able to uncover, most of the secrets of these canyons remain a mystery. Another mystery about these canyons is just how they were created. Canyons form on Earth due to erosion. This may not be the case on Titan. It is also possible that geological activities facilitated the creation of the canyons, but again, scientists cannot be certain. According to Valeria Poggiali, the lead author of the research paper that describes Cassini's finding on Titan, it's likely that a combination of these forces contributed to the formation of the deep canyons, but at present it's not clear to what degree each was involved. What is clear is that any description of Titan's geological evolution needs to be able to explain how the canyons got there. Although scientists can theorize about the origins of Titan, there is still a lot to uncover. Adding more to the mysteries about this moon, scientists suspect Titan to be a potential area for alien life. They suspect this so much that there are plans for NASA to send an autonomous submarine to explore more of Titan. Despite the new data uncovered by the Cassini spacecraft, There is still much to learn about Titan, its canyons, and what they mean for humans on Earth, as well as the universe itself. Out there beyond our skies, and even sometimes in our backyards, there are constant discoveries that uncover mysteries that were previously incomprehensible to us. New discoveries continue to force us out of our comfort zone and make it clear just how much more exploring needs to be done before we even begin to understand what is around us. But what do you make of these recent discoveries? The world is full of the very rare and unusual, from our own planet Earth to the very farthest reaches of the cosmos. Whether natural discoveries are being made or laboratory experiments are being carried out successfully, scientific innovation changes and evolves from day to day, leaving us in a constant state of wonder and awe. So today, we will be going over 3 recent discoveries that came about as a result of this innovation. Azores Underwater Pyramid Discovery. The first one we are going to look at is the Azores Underwater Pyramid Discovery. Pyramids have been built nearly everywhere in the world, with an eerie similarity and mystery already existing for those above ground. Those below ground are even more thought-provoking. The discovery was made right off the islands of San Miguel and Tessera in the Azores. Diocletiano Silva, the man said to have discovered this, was on a fishing trip and using the ship's bathymetric equipment. He saw what appeared to be a perfectly geometric structure, making him question what exactly he was floating above. He noticed that the structure was a perfect pyramid. It's amazing because it forms a perfect pyramid. Moreover, orientation, deployment of the pyramid, the vertices are oriented north and south, just north and south. Such as Giza pyramids in Egypt, Silver told the Portuguese news website Terra. The pyramid is very obviously not a natural formation. The pyramid's age is supposedly 12,000 to 20,000 years old, dating all the way back to the last ice age. But little research has been put into the pyramid itself. Interestingly, the Portuguese Navy has dismissed the pyramid as a seamount based on old sonar readings in the area. No investigative team has actually gone to the site to check what this occurrence is truly all about. One of the admirals of the Navy, Admiral Fernando Pires, commander of the maritime zone of Azores, says there is not enough information about the pyramid to say what it really might be. He says that at the time the probes would be a danger to navigation and find nothing. Pires also says that the Navy is not ruling out the fact that this entire structure could have been caused by a volcanic eruption, making it a regular underwater land structure. However, no such research has been conducted and further probes have been shut down. There are no civilizations local or even remotely nearby the area that were traditionally pyramid-building societies. Archaeologists that did have the opportunity to excavate the area found an epigraph from due to governmental decisions and the Navy's overall skirting of the issue. It's probably a good idea for researchers to accept their answer of this simply being a volcanic underwater structure. The Ross Ice Shelf is freezing, not melting. In 2017, a rather strange discovery was made in regard to the Ross Ice Shelf, the largest shelf of ice in Antarctica. This ice shelf, which has some points which reach an astonishing 10,000 feet thick, is one of many shelves which contain, restrain, and generally hold back the ice of West Antarctica. It is estimated that if the Ross Ice Shelf does one day collapse, then the global sea level has the capability of rising by 10 feet. In November of 2017, a team of scientists from New Zealand investigated the Great Ross Ice Shelf, using a hot water drill to create a tunnel-like gap for a thermometer and camera to go underneath the surface level. This technique gives us a snapshot of the environment below surface level, cluing scientists in as to the history of this ginormous shelf, as well as giving us more information as to what exactly it is doing now and the possible future happenings. With thoughts focused on global warming, this research team anticipated finding melting ice, though this is not the conclusion that the temperature and currents indicated. Contrary to expectations, the water beneath the Ross Ice Shelf seemed to be freezing, and Christina Hulb, a glaciologist from the University of Otago in New Zealand, was a co-leader on the project and summed up the strangeness of this discovery in 4 simple words when talking to National Geographic. It blew our minds. Plans to monitor the future of the Ross Ice Shelf have already been implemented, with the 2017 research team leaving instruments behind in order to measure currents and temperatures within the hole over the following years. The freezing of the ice shelf seems promising, suggesting it is plenty stable, at least for the time being. Scientists are also optimistic that the findings from this study will let us see if there have been any changes or melting that has happened in the past, as a direct result of climate shifts. Despite the overwhelmingly positive findings of this particular study, the climate crisis remains a prevalent and concerning threat to our planet, and one that is worsening at an accelerated and rapidly increasing pace. Global warming and the melting of ice caps is an issue we continue to face, with NASA confirming that we are losing ice in Antarctica at a quicker pace with each passing year. Whilst we are yet to determine exactly why we are seemingly so lucky with the peculiar freezing of the Ross ice shelf, it certainly is a positive sign that we are not facing the looming threat of the ice shelf collapsing anytime soon. The Road Hope Skull. The main part of the Road Hope mountain range lies in Bulgaria, with around 20% spilling over the border into Greece. The mountains themselves are absolutely stunning, with luscious greenery covering the countless river gorges that are a prominent feature of the area as an ecological and cultural crossroad between Europe, Asia, and the Mediterranean. The Road Hope Mountains are extremely biodiverse. Many species ranging from big bears to small squirrels called the range their home. But what if we told you that over 1,000 years ago the Rado Mountains were home to some less conventional creatures, shall we say? In 2001, a man named Roman Gentchev came across something truly bizarre whilst hiking in the Rado Mountains. Roman lived in Plovdiv, cultural center of Bulgaria just north of the mountains, a city which, thousands of years ago, was part of the ancient Greek Empire. But whether the discovery was actually so coincidental is our first mystery. Roman claimed that he had been experiencing extremely vivid dreams for some time prior to his mysterious discovery, and he felt as if somebody had been guiding him towards it. It was like Roman had made a connection with something supernatural. He claimed that the dreams had guided him to a spot where figures in strange silver dresses gathered in the Road Oak Mountains. Lo and behold, upon venturing up there, he found something truly bizarre. Just a little way below the ground's surface, Roman saw something hard and beige-colored. After clearing away the mud, the object revealed itself. It was a skull, but not just any old skull. The skull that Roman found was truly bizarre. It resembled no known creature and looked severely deformed. The front of the skull was inverted, very flat, and the nose, mouth, and eye sockets looked markedly different to anything that a human or animal would possess. The eyes were large, pointing diagonally upwards. The mouth was thin and short, with 2 cavities either side of it. The nose drew into the mouth, and the top of the skull lent itself to holding a rather large brain. Researchers and archaeologists alike were completely baffled. They had never seen anything like this before and, in fact, could not even link the skull to any prehistoric beings that may have been fossilized. The skull weighed around 500 grams, and next to it, a small piece of metal weighing nearly a kilo was also discovered. However, after more research and even more bemusement, the project was unofficially called off in 2002. To this day, nobody quite knows what the dreams that Roman experienced really meant, or how they guided him to the Rhodope skull. It must be said that this is one of few occasions where scientists have come together and agreed that an extraterrestrial being may be responsible for this truly strange relic. Man of the Hole found living alone in the Amazon rainforest in 1996. Brazil is known for having some of the oldest uncontacted tribes in the world. Whilst you may have heard of these tribes before, have you heard of the loneliest man in the world? He's a man in his 50s who's been living in the Amazon rainforest for 25 years. He previously lived with a tribe, but his fellow tribe members were attacked and passed away. The Brazilian government has an indigenous agency called FUNAI, which has been monitoring the man from a distance since 1996. They do so to prove that he's alive and to renew a restriction on the land he uses in his day-to-day life. Previously, they had only captured a blurry photograph back in 1998, until recently when they got their hands on something much better. FUNAI captured video footage from afar in 2018. It shows him in the forest working to chop down a tree. The video was shared with political motivation after Fune's budget was cut. They hope to draw attention to the indigenous rights within the country. This video is also exciting because before this we had not seen much of this unknown man. Whilst there have been numerous research reports that have looked into his life, he is uncontacted. That means that no one outside the tribe has spoken to him that we know of. His tribe's name and language still remain unknown as well, not leaving us with much to go off of. Aside from being referred to as the loneliest man in the world, he's also been called the Whole Indian. As you can imagine, this name was given because he has been known to leave behind deep holes in the forest. Experts believe he was using them to hide or trap animals. Researchers have also discovered straw huts and various tools that have been made by hand. Many are surprised that this man has survived alone for so long and still remains in excellent health from what we can see. However, Fune claims that they would love to learn more about the man, but he has only acted in a violent manner in the past. He has made it very clear that he doesn't want people to contact him by shooting arrows at anyone who comes his way. Whilst it may seem aggressive and unnecessary, he has a very good reason to be concerned for his well-being. After all, his entire tribe was attacked, and he was left to fend for himself. Farmers and illegal loggers are also after the land this man lives on, which means he is constantly in danger of those who hope to steal his land and will do whatever it takes to get rid of the tribe for good. The man could also contract serious illnesses if he were to get in contact with the outside world. Therefore, researchers have made it clear that it's best to protect him without asking too many questions. What will happen to this man in the future? How long will he be protected or survive? It's difficult to say, as things are constantly changing. It would be great to receive more information regarding his lifestyle, language, and tribe's name, but we may never find out. What do modern-day scientists say about Atlantis? Scientists, understandably, are a little tired of Atlantis discoveries. The firm mentioned in the first section of this video are not the first to claim they have found the ancient city, and they certainly will not be the last. Researchers are quick to point out that so-called Atlantean ruins most likely belong to other ancient cultures and are incorrectly being passed off as being from Atlantis. In fact, this occurrence happens so often that scientists have begun to collectively sigh at the sight of another apparent Atlantis discovery. So far, people have claimed to find Atlantis in Bolivia, the Caribbean, Turkey, Germany, Malta, Turkey, and even Antarctica. The existence of Atlantis is not considered to be factual by most researchers. In Plato's original descriptions of the city in 360 BC, he mentioned that he had basically heard of the ancient civilization through passed-down information. Plato used the downfall of a once great civilization as a way to explain his thoughts on corruption. While Atlantis was a mighty and prosperous place, they eventually drove themselves into oblivion by the hand of the gods. Scholars have always seen the Atlantis story as just a story. Yet the narrative suddenly switched when in 1882 the book Atlantis, the Antediluvian World was published, written by amateur scientist Ignatius Donnelly. The book claimed that Atlantis was not in fact a parable, but a real historical location. After Donnelly's book was published, the idea of Atlantis slowly grew into the public consciousness. Eventually, an idea of Atlantis totally separate from that of Plato's began to take hold, leading people to search for a city that most likely never existed. Still, many have followed descriptions left by Plato in order to find Atlantis' geographical location. As Plato writes, in front of the mouth, which you Greeks call the Pillars of Hercules, there lay an island which was larger than Libya and Asia together. This has led many explorers across the globe piecing together clues as a kind of map. Interestingly, the Merlin Burrows discovery is one of many that claims Atlantis is located in the southern region of Spain. National Geographic produced a documentary named Atlantis Rising, supposedly showing evidence that the city was in Don Lana National Park. A 2004 study in the journal Antiquity also made the same claim. Additionally, the director of the Anglo-Spanish American School of Archaeology, Belina Maria Wishaw, authored the book Atlantis in Andalusia in 1929, which theorized that the region was a colony of Atlantis. Scientists believe that this area is a hotbed for claims because ancient humans lived in the region thousands of years ago. In a December issue of the Journal of Archaeological Science, it reports a study indicated that in what is now the Doñana National Park, humans were living in the area around 5,000 years ago. Even if the claims made by different groups were true, the dating of the Atlantean civilization does not match with any of our understanding of our evolution or growth to human civilization. From that, we can assume that claims of Atlantis are fake, and that humans around 10,000 years ago were much more similar to our idea of cavemen than an advanced set of superhumans. But what do you make of these recent discoveries? As much as humans have discovered during our time on Earth, one would think the mysteries would start to dwindle. Yet, even today, in 2022, there are captivating discoveries, accomplishments, and still so much unknown that is unveiling itself to us every day. Things we discover on our Earth can tell us much more about our past, while cosmic mysteries can make us wonder how much more we have yet to uncover. So today, we will be looking at 3 discoveries that, if you were not paying attention, might have slipped right under our own noses. Elongated skulls found in Germany. Buried deep within a collection of other skeletons in southern Germany, the skeletons of 9 women who were distinctly different from the rest lay unnoticed. Hidden away for over 1,500 years, we may finally have some analysis and hypothesis on who these women were, what they looked like, and why they appear to be so different. Krishna Varama, a genomicist from Stony Brook University, said, "Our data points to barbarian tribes in Western and Central Europe specifically acquiring exotic-looking women with elongated heads born elsewhere. Even though these skeletons were sitting among other ancient blue-eyed, blonde-haired Bavarians, these skeletons came from somewhere else. Genetically, these skeletons were totally different, and their skulls show signs of deformation, with some having intermediate elongation. These skulls match more genotypes of Bulgaria and Romania, which would mean they had darker eyes and darker hair. So what happened to their heads? The most popular current hypothesis is that this was a cultural practice where women elongate their skulls to produce this look. The thought is that these women would have been wealthy and possibly in relationships with the men in the Bavarian community. More research is needed to confirm this hypothesis. Discussion of whether these purposeful deformations caused any harm or cognitive problems. We are sure that just as these new discoveries were made, we will get more detail as the archaeological teams continue to uncover the history of these women. NASA's Space Telescope spots most powerful light ever seen on Jupiter. Just this month, scientists from the New Star Space Observatory have detected the highest light ever reported from Jupiter, making it the first telescope to ever detect such high-energy light from the gas giant. This solves a mystery which has been unsolved since 1992. The question of why the Ulysses mission saw no X-rays when it flew past Jupiter. Yes, X-rays are indeed a form of light, but with much higher energies and wavelengths, and are unable to be seen by the human eye. However, Ulysses was specifically capable of sensing higher energy X-rays, which would mean it would have been able to witness some level of light when passing over Jupiter. According to astrophysicist Kaya Mori, it is quite challenging for planets to generate X-rays in the range that NuSTAR detects. So how exactly did scientists see this coming from Jupiter? Jupiter has an enormous magnetic field, and it is spinning very quickly. Those two characteristics mean that the planet's magnetosphere acts like a giant particle accelerator, and that is what makes these higher energy emissions possible. However, the Ulysses back in 1992 was capable of sensing higher energy X-rays. So why didn't it? According to a new study, the light that comes from the energetic electrons that NASA's spacecraft Juno can detect, with its Jovian auroral distributions experiment known as JADE, and its Jupiter Energetic Particle Detector instrument known as JEDI, are the culprit of Bremsstrahlung, an extremely fast-moving set of electrons. These particles produce light when the electrons encounter charged atoms in Jupiter's atmosphere. William Dunn, a researcher at the University College London, says that the discovery of these emissions leaves us with more questions. We know that rotating magnetic fields can accelerate particles, but we do not fully understand how they reach such high speeds on Jupiter. New star left Earth on June 13, 2012, and today, a decade later, we are reaping the benefits of new knowledge. But who knows what we will discover in the next decade? NASA unveils the first images from the James Webb Space Telescope. On February 11th, NASA released the first images from their observatory 48 days after its initial Christmas Day launch. It spent the first 30 days unfolding and setting up configuration at almost 1 million miles away from Earth. Though the photos may not yet be high quality, the team of scientists working on the project will be making minute adjustments to the duration of its trek to get crisp images of this deep path in the universe. Taking so much data right on the first day required all of Webb's site operations and data processing systems here on Earth working smoothly with the observatory in space right from the start. And we found light from all 18 segments very near the center early in that search. This is a great starting point for mirror alignment, said Marshall Perrin, deputy telescope scientist on the project. Jane Rigby, the Webb Operations Project scientist, warned the public that the first images would be ugly, but even still, we are getting images of things like constellations and stars 260 light-years away. As a matter of fact, one of the constellations will be so bright during the journey that the telescope won't be able to look at it once it achieves full focus. Additionally, infrared light is being studied back at home, while in communication with the James Webb Space Telescope, so the observatory will remain frigid to obtain accurate data. This means it will be sitting at a cool negative 370 degrees Fahrenheit. The scientists even snapped a selfie of the telescope's main mirror, which helped with the process of alignment and configuration. Is this the first telescope selfie in space? It just may be. And we cannot wait to see the ongoing process of the photos the team at NASA has done. We'll provide. But what do you make of these space discoveries?